17. Bob and I wanted to put a little video explanation of what we're doing here at the Knitting Factory. Some of the recent things that have come out don't really articulate what we do that's very, very important here. And we really want to explain it to people so that they can get a better feeling for what the Knitting Factory is all about. So the first thing we want to explain is the cappuccino machine.
There's definitely a process to follow while making a good cappuccino. I'm going to use the double filter since I'm making one for Michael and I. This is the single. It's tapered. First you make sure that your espresso machine is warmed up so that the steam pressure is at a good level. Place the espresso in the filter, making sure that it is packed firmly into the filter. And also, when you're dispensing the espresso, you must start frothing the milk. Okay, starting to froth just under the surface, starts to rise, and when the milk starts to boil, it's all over. There we go. Taking 2 cups. I actually like to dispense the milk first, so that when I pour the espresso in, it floats the milk, so that you can see the different colors. Floating the milk. The cinnamon and sugar are optional. I know Michael doesn't take any sugar, so I'm just going to put some cinnamon on these. And when we're completed, we'll be able to start the workday. These are pretty successful. Here,
Beautiful. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very much. We're in the knot room now. This used to be our old kitchen, where we tried serving food for about 3 months after we bought the downstairs. But we lost so much money trying to be a restaurant that we quickly stopped serving food and turned it into a small little performance space. We have poetry, video, film, lots of prose readings, tiny dance performances, solos, duos, and little experimental groups of music, all happening in here in the 40-seat small knot room. What we're going to watch now is a very silly program that aired on Channel 13 about 1 week ago today, or actually last night. No, actually a week ago from Friday, and it's Sunday morning now.
It's called the 11th Hour.
11th Hour, yeah.
They call these guys the world's greatest rock band. They were in town this week. If you see them, you'll be hip. If you watch our band, you'll be avant-garde. That's our story tonight. Welcome to the 11th Hour. I'm Robert Lipsyte. At Shea Stadium over 2 nights this week, about 130,000 people paid up to $30 each to watch the Rolling Stones. At the Knitting Factory this week, about 1,300 people paid about $7 each to hear such bands as these guys, the Ordinaires. You never heard of the Ordinaires? Well, you probably never heard of the Knitting Factory, a club on Houston Street that is considered the cutting edge of new music. The place is run by 2 27-year-olds from Milwaukee, Mike Dorf and Bob Appel. We'll be hearing from the Ordinaires later, but first, a visit to the Knitting Factory.
We started the Knitting Factory out of necessity. We ran this record company and could not afford to pay any rent. And came up with the brilliant idea of selling coffee and teas. And having a performance space. And it evolved rather quickly. Within a couple months of opening, we had music 7 nights a week. And then we tried to have poetry before the music and dance before the music and video, and trying to knit together all the different art forms into
one space.
There's that word again, knit.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of, it evolved. It really evolved without us having a real clear philosophy of what we wanted to do.
You're listening to Zahar, live at the Knitting Factory.
We've known each other since we were 7 or 8 years old, and then went to camp every year, and then went to high school, and we got kicked out of Hebrew class together. There are men here that want to cut off our electricity. Yeah, I've made a number of payments. Which account now? We have 3 accounts with you. I paid that bill. I don't want them coming back later this afternoon and cutting off our juice. My mom, when she first came here, when I told her how much we're paying in rent, she was crying. I just learned this last trip that my dad was crying too. When they got into the taxi and were driving back to the hotel, they really thought I lost my mind. You know, and I can't tell you how much of a wreck and a dump this place was. In fact, people were when we were trying to think of a name, people were suggesting the dump, because it really was such a dump. I mean, CBGB's looked like a really nice palace compared to the way this place was before.
A lot of artists do try out new material here, and what ends up happening is the first time they play with a new group or something, or a new ensemble, you know, it can really stink. The crowd usually thinks it's really great, but musicians and we think, well, this is going to be really great. An alliance is formed between us and the musicians because we let them experiment in our space. Half a year or a year down the line, they come back and show us how they've grown and everything. That's really exciting to us to really help foster that. We make most of our money in the operations of the club from our bar. And that also poses a problem because, first of all, we're naive and we're from Wisconsin, so we don't charge drink minimum.
And, you know, you have a jazz crowd, and we have 130 people at the club, and they drink tea. Just recently, this couple came here, and I was sitting downstairs and said, "Hi, we're on our honeymoon, and we wanted to come here. We just came from Niagara Falls, and oh, honey, there's the ceiling," and they're taking photos. And it just was this whirlwind. They came in, they were so excited, and then they left. And in their wedding album, they have the wedding and probably the whole festivities there, and they have a shot of Niagara Falls and a shot of the Knitting Factory. And that's such a gas. That is a real gas.
You don't know that they're putting it in there.
Yeah, maybe they didn't, but I'd assume so. They were so excited about it. I couldn't even get that excited about Niagara Falls.
We're having a lot of fun with all our different projects, obviously, but this is a very strenuous job, and we actually cut down from like 90 to 100 to about, like, you know, 70 to 80, 85 hours a week now.
But in a very short period, I've been losing my hair, and he's going gray.
I'm going gray.
And, you know, 2, 3 years ago, you know, we looked a lot better.
Basically what it is that our entire schedules are completely filled. I mean, we don't sleep much, and we're under a lot of stress, and we take a lot of Advil.
But we love it. We love it.
Yeah, we love it.
And now, fresh from the Knitting Factory, playing their MTV cover of the Led Zeppelin hit Kashmir, the Ordinaires.
So, it's really too bad they didn't capture the greatness of the Ordinaires live, like at the Knitting Factory. The studio version was kind of shoddy.
This is really, really laid back.
Yeah.
Isn't that good? Let's move on, shall we?
I'm up in the recording studio at the Knitting Factory. This is what we call Master Control Room number 1, or as some people refer to it as the boiling fart box. No, I can't. I'm up in Master Control Room number 1, or the recording studio at the Knitting Factory. This is where we record live performances that happen downstairs on the performance stage. The format we use is a 2-track digital one. We have a DAT machine and a PCM recorder. They're both 2-track digital recording, just like a home stereo cassette deck, except for they're in the digital format. Because of this, there is no post-production or what people would refer to as mix-down involved. So once the performance is recorded, that's it. If you goof up, it's goofed up. So we actually think that this captures a live performance in a much more accurate, natural kind of way. And the way we do it is there's a splitter downstairs. So mics set up on the stage go to, a signal goes to the house system, the engineer running it there, and the signal goes up to here. They're completely independent of each other, and 2 independent mixes are created, one for the house sound and one for the recording sound, which is going to tape. Actually, we recorded a couple of live records, compilation records. This is volume 1. It's on A&M Records, and our second one just came out. This is volume 2. You see, there's green. It's green. See, green and black. Here's the CD. Actually, on volume 1, you'll notice that the SPARS code, excuse me, which explains how the thing was recorded and mastered, says DDD, digitally recorded, digitally mixed, and digitally mastered. Likewise, this one was also digitally recorded, mixed, and mastered, but A&M seemed, for some reason, put AAD on it. I have no idea why, but it's just kind of a goof up there. So anyway, I'd like to introduce everybody to Jonathan Nelson. Jonathan, could you explain to the good people about our radio series now?
Well, Bob, we have about 140 stations in North America broadcasting our radio series. It consists of 8 one-hour programs of all kinds of music that we recorded here at the club in Manhattan. In fact, next year, TDK has agreed to sponsor us. When they sponsor us, they should be giving us tapes and DAT tapes and hopefully some videotapes. I really certainly hope they do, because these guys, they're just so cheap. I mean, I always have to run out and buy tapes right before all the shows, and I ask them for the money, and it's like, oh man, we got to pay our electric bill, our phone bill. I mean, what's the point? I mean, we got to record this
John,
stuff.
why don't we listen to an example of one of these programs, okay? Why don't we listen to John Zorn tape? Recent NHK program that appeared last week all over Japan. Hopefully we'll be doing these festivals all over the world as an attempt to really illuminate the music that we have from this small club here in New York.
Come ばんは。ウィークエンドアメリカのマーシャ・クラフトーです。今日はニューヨークからお送りいたします。マンハッタンの街路樹もすっかり色づき、今週末は絶好の行楽日和となりましたニューヨーク。今朝は紅葉を楽しみに郊外に出かける家族連れの姿が目につきました。クラブ側も客入りを心配して一般受けするミュージシャンを選ぶ傾向が強まってきたと言われています。そんな中で今脚光を浴びているのがここニッティングファクトリーです。いかにもニューヨークらしい前衛的なミュージシャンたちがショーアップできるスペースがなくなりつつあるニューヨークの音楽シーンを大胆にもひっくり返そうとしているのがこのニッティングファクトリーです。今日はですねチェコスロバキアからのインプロビゼーショナルミュージック、即興的音楽をパフォームしてくれるデュオが演奏するというので大勢の人が集まってきました。Do you come to the knitting factory very often?
Oh, sometimes, yeah, because here in New York is many clubs, but this club is exactly, it's special something. Yeah.
How is it special?
Because here, I think that here is avant-garde music, but not commercial music, something, not for, something for battles. Some music is in the battle, like rock and heavy metal or something. And I think that here is good stuff, like free music and so open.
天井一面に貼り付けられた古いスウェーター。その名もニッティングファクトリー、編み物工場と名付けられたこのライブスポットは2年半前、アメリカ中西部ウィスコンシン州から出てきた27歳の若者ボブとマイケルが資本金7万5000ドルで始めました。水道の配管以外は全て手作りです。大学でふざけていたのがつい昨日のようだよと本人たちが言うように、クラブのオーナーというより60年代のヒッピーを思わせる2人。毎晩のブッキング、出演者を決めるのが大学の法学部を中退したマイケルの日課。週に60本余り送られてくるデモテープを聞き、まだ誰も聞いたこともないミュージシャンをニューヨークのミュージックシーンに紹介しています。
Pretty weird tape.
Do you think you understand more of both ends, the business side and the musician side?
We traveled around the country and played in places that, you know, had no stage or no sound system, or we paid to play. The first time the band came to New York, you know, it cost us $45 to play at tracks uptown, you know, or we'd play at CBGB's, you know, and we'd make $17 even though the place was packed, you know, so we knew a lot of the scams that club owners pull. You know, we played 100 clubs all around the country, so we knew what it was like, so we knew the fairest ways to pay groups, and we're very honest about it, and we knew what, what interest an artist has in terms of the stage requirements, or just a cup of tea, or just an attitude, you know, rather than thinking that the musicians are sort of incidental to the club. I mean, the reason why the Knitting Factory, I think, has really taken off, and there's a lot of reasons, but one is people come here to see music. You know, they don't come here to have a drink, and there happens to be music playing, but, you know, so therefore the art that we have is the number one thing, and then the music, or the selling of drinks is the second thing.
元ギタリストのボブはクラブのライティングやサウンド担当のテクニカルマン。毎週全米180の大学ラジオ局で流されているニッティングファクトリーからの生演奏もここで作られています。番組自体は一銭にもならないけれど、クラブの宣伝には最適だそうで、現在番組を集めてリリースされたレコードの売り上げがクラブの経営を助けています。What are some other possibilities that you're willing to take a risk or explore for the knitting factory?
Actually, we're thinking of opening clubs in other cities besides Milwaukee, Tokyo being one of them possibly, and around the United States. Europe. And it's basically twofold. I mean, obviously one of them is for us to make money and earn a living, more than the $6,900 that I made in 1987. But really we think that it's the most important thing for us in our position is to create a very, very strong base. And some of the mistakes that other club owners or other people in the music industry have made is that they go for a very, the quick buck instead of really forming a very strong base. And then it will actually become less and less of a risk. And then if one of our projects goes under or fails, we'll have lots of other things to fall back on. And it's also educational process for us and music communities around the country and the world, and help these, it will better help these musicians and their music to be entered into the mainstream. So.
You see it in all these major corporations, Sony buying Columbia, Pictures, and they own CBS Records, and, it all being very horizontal is really important, and we're doing that on a much, much smaller scale. We have our record stuff and our radio series, so we're really creating a real network, or I don't want to keep using that, but of ways to help promote these artists, not just play in the club, but get exposure through the press and through the different medias as best we can.アバンギャルドアートは商品化するのが難しいと言われてきましたが、そこに目をつけ挑戦する怖いもの知らずのマイケルとボブ。競争の激しいニューヨークのライブスポットシーンで主流とされている音楽をどこまで変えることができるか期待したいです。
I hope this hasn't been too boring for you. We just wanted to tell you a little bit about what's happening here. We'd really like to do a lot more records, some video production, and just help show people what's happening at thriving scene downtown in New York City.
I couldn't have said that better myself. Why don't we end with just a video of the Jazz Passengers, who are going to be going on tour to Europe with us and also are on our first record.
Thank you.